I'm Anthony Harper, and I'm here with Mr. Mike Riddle. Mike, thank you for joining me, and share with our listeners about your background and your knowledge about the concept we're going to be talking about is evolution, and specifically about in the public school curriculum and your knowledge of that happening and how that comes about. But first, share with our listeners about your knowledge, your experience in dealing with scientific issues and curriculum.
Well, first of all, Anthony, I grew up an evolutionist. I was not a Christian until I was 30 years old, and I was an evolutionist all the way up to that time. And I started studying the sciences, and I found something rather different when I was taught in the public education system. And the science didn't seem to agree with the evolution that I've been taught. But since then, I've been continuing to study. I've been in the creation evolution field for over 35 years, teaching and speaking around the country at places like secular universities and NASA scientists. I've also ran worldwide education organizations such as Microsoft, US Sprint, taught in public schools, taught in Christian schools, and even at the graduate level. So I'm very familiar with many of the arguments that are being used in both the creation side and the evolution side.
You know, evolution is one key issue that many would say is the foundational problem with the education system. How specifically is evolution being portrayed in your knowledge in these curriculums?
Well, number one, it's not being portrayed in a what I would call a manner of honest or integrity. For example, when we get to these things called the dating methods, now we're not talking boy girl here, we're talking about how we date rocks. Mm-hmm. And how do they date the rocks? And one of the things they don't tell our students or don't put in the textbooks is that all these methods for dating rocks are based on assumptions. In other words, they're hiding some interesting and very important details behind the dating methods. And another example is the origin of life. They talk about a famous experiment that was called the Miller experiment all the way back in the 1950s, and how Miller got the building blocks for life, which are like amino acids. But what they don't tell the students, he got the wrong kind of amino acids. See, all amino acids in life, all biological proteins are made up of what we call left-handed amino acids. Miller got an even combination of left and right-handedness. They don't tell our students that. So what they're really doing, in order to make evolution look viable, they're leaving out the credible science. As a matter of fact, the observable science. And that's one of the things we need to train our students to do, is how to ask the good questions. See, they'll tell us that evolution is both a fact and a theory. But in order to be a fact, it has to be observable and repeatable. In order to be a scientific theory, it must be observable and be repeatable. Well, whoever observed the Big Bang? Well, no. So it cannot be a fact, and it cannot be a scientific theory. Whoever observed a star or a galaxy form? No, that can't be a fact or theory. No one ever observed the origin of life through naturalistic processes. No one's ever observed one creature change into a brand new kind of creature, such as a dinosaur evolving into a bird. No one's observed that. No one's ever observed millions and billions of years. So the whole idea of what is evolution is not being taught accurately. Let me give you another example. Stars. I read through these textbooks, and especially in the Common Core, the new textbooks. They talk all about how stars form, how we get these great big gas and dust clouds out there called nebula, and they rotate around and around and around. As they rotate around and around, they begin to gravitation collapse inward and form a new star. And that's what they're putting in our textbooks. But I have a technical term for that. It's called baloney. Anybody that studied the section in physics that deals with heat pressure knows full well that will not happen. Because as a cloud circles around, dust and gas cloud circles around, rotates around, it will begin to gravitation collapse inward. But as it does so, it generates heat pressure, which is always stronger than the gravity. Those are things we can measure. So there's something drastically wrong in our textbooks. It is called, they're teaching evolutionism and not teaching science anymore. In other words, evolutionism is a protected philosophy in this country. So the new Common Core books, they're trying to come up with new ways to entice our students into believing that life could originate by naturalistic processes. They talk about a cell that didn't have any proteins to begin with. But has anybody ever seen a cell that did not have proteins? No. So there they're talking about how maybe RNA evolved first, but they don't talk about the complexity of RNA. It's more complex than proteins are. So they're using all kinds of bluffing, and I call it plain out bluffing, to help protect evolutionism. They're also creating what I call the illusion of facts when they really don't have any facts. So there's a major problem in our public education system. And we need to get our students well trained in these schools, specifically because about 90% of our Christian students still go to public schools. We need to get them trained on this issue, because if we don't, we're going to continue to lose our Christian youth to the world. And as it stands right now, there's been 4 independent studies showing about 70% of our Christian youth lack confidence in God's Word, the Bible, and are leaving the church before they finish school. So it's up to us as Christians to be able to train our students. It's up to us to make sure other youth understand that what they're being taught in out of these textbooks is not all that accurate.
Well, the basic issue about education is that you've got to deal with facts. We've heard a lot in the news about fake news. We have a lot, some might say, fake news in our textbooks. And the question is, for a lot of students, for the training, is if they're presented with information that's supposed to be portrayed as facts, but it's not really, how can they have a foundational education if their information in their textbooks is not really truly scientific and is not based on reason? How would you respond to that?
Well, Anthony, you hit it right. It's fake information in the textbooks. Again, the idea of bluffing. And what needs to be done is we need to get to these students. Somehow we need to get to as many students as we can and let them fully understand what the real science is about. For instance, again, the Big Bang. How can you have a Big Bang until you have matter? Where did the matter come from? And the Big Bang is incidentally terrible science today. It really doesn't predict anything accurate. It doesn't predict how the stars got there, how the galaxies got there. Now, when we talk about this Big Bang, we need to be accurate about it. It's not like a dynamite explosion. It's an expansion of space and time, a hot fireball expanding space and time. But again, where did the matter come from? And how did we get an homogeneous temperature like we have out there in this universe? In other words, we look out everywhere, the temperature is about the same, 2.4 Kelvin, which is very, very cold. How could that have happened? There's no explanation for that other than making up a rescue mechanism, something that has never ever been observed. Or they talk about during the initial stages of the Big Bang, the speed of light was much faster. Well, what are they saying there? It was much faster than this today? Well, first of all, what propelled it to that speed? And secondly, what caused it to slow down to the speed we have today? So there's a lot of questions. If we could just train our students to ask good science questions, maybe we could get some better teaching in our schools. Now, I'm not directly blaming the teachers, because they went to the universities and they got taught false information there also. So we can take it back to the university level where they're not teaching good science anymore. They're teaching evolutionism.
Well, you've got a lot of great information on your website, creationtraining.org.
Yes, that's right. Our website is creationtraining.org. We have over 80 30-minute videos you can look at for free. I even put my PowerPoint slides for all my talks you can download for free. So we have lots of free information out there, and free is good. We like free. So go to our website, creationtraining.org, and you find all this information.
A lot of great information. Thank you, Mike, for sharing.
Thank you, Anthony.